Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her hand against the cold metal wall, trying to find her way through the darkness. The power failure had come without warning, and now the diplomatic station floated in emergency mode. Red lights flickered weakly every few seconds, then died again. She shouldn't have wandered away from the group. But when the lights went out, everyone panicked and ran in different directions. Now Sarah was alone in a section of the station she didn't recognize. The station was huge, built to host the first meetings between humans and the Krathic Empire. Sarah was just a junior member of Earth's delegation, a xenobiologist who studied alien life. She was supposed to observe and take notes, nothing more. But she had always been too curious for her own good. Sarah turned a corner and stopped. She heard something, a small sound almost like crying, high-pitched chirps that sounded scared and desperate. Her training took over. She was a biologist. Those sounds meant an animal in distress. Sarah moved toward the noise, using her tablet's dim screen as a light. The chirping grew louder. Sarah found a door with a small window. Inside, she could see movement. Small shapes, maybe 3 or 4 of them, huddled together. They were shaking. Sarah checked the door panel. It was flashing red. The environmental controls were failing in that room. She could see frost forming on the window. Whatever was inside would freeze if someone didn't help. She didn't think. She just acted. Sarah pulled out her emergency override card, the one given to all delegation members. She swiped it across the panel. The door beeped and slid open. Cold air hit her face like a slap. Sarah stepped inside quickly. The small creatures scattered, pressing against the far wall. Now she could see them clearly in her tablet's light. They were about the size of large cats covered in scales that shimmered blue and silver. They had 4 legs and long tails. Their heads were triangular with large eyes that reflected her light. And their mouths. Their mouths were full of crystal-like fangs. Sarah's blood went cold. These weren't just any animals. These were Krathic cubs. The door slammed shut behind her. Sarah spun around and grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't move. She tried her override card again. Nothing. The emergency protocols had locked her inside. No, 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 Sarah whispered. She pulled at the door, pressed every button on the panel. The door stayed shut. Behind her, the cubs made low growling sounds. Sarah turned slowly. The 3 cubs had stopped shaking. Now they were watching her. Their scales stood up, making them look bigger. They hissed, showing all those sharp teeth. Sarah knew about the Krathic. Everyone on Earth did. They were the most powerful species in this sector of space. Apex predators. Warriors who had never lost a war. Their diplomats were 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor. Even their children were dangerous, and she was locked in a room with 3 of them. Sarah's heart pounded. She made herself breathe slowly. She was a biologist. She understood animal behavior. The cubs were scared. They were in a cold room with a strange alien. They were reacting to a threat. She needed to show them she wasn't a threat. Sarah sat down slowly on the floor. She made herself as small as possible. She didn't look directly at the cubs, knowing that direct eye contact could be seen as aggression. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cubs kept hissing, but they didn't attack. That was good. The temperature kept dropping. Sarah could see her breath now. The cubs started shaking again. They pressed closer together, trying to stay warm. Sarah remembered her training. Young animals, especially reptiles, couldn't regulate their body temperature well. These cubs were cold-blooded or close to it. They would die if the temperature kept falling. She had to do something. Sarah slowly took off her jacket. The cubs hissed louder, but she ignored them. She opened the jacket wide and held it out. "Come here," she said gently. "I know I'm scary, but I'm warm. You need warmth." The cubs didn't move. They just stared at her with those large, intelligent eyes. Sarah stayed still. She kept talking in a low, calm voice. She told them about Earth, about her cat back home, about anything she could think of. Her voice seemed to calm them a little. The hissing stopped. The smallest cub took a step forward. Then another. It was shaking hard now. Sarah didn't move. The cub came closer, sniffing the air. Its nose twitched. Slowly, carefully, the small cub touched Sarah's jacket with one paw. Then it pressed against her side. Sarah felt its cold scales through her shirt. She wrapped the jacket around it gently. The cub made a sound, not a hiss this time, more like a chirp. It pressed closer to Sarah's warmth. The other 2 cubs watched. Then like a dam breaking, they rushed forward. Sarah gasped as they climbed onto her, seeking heat. She wrapped her arms and jacket around all three, holding them close. They were cold and heavy. Their scales felt strange, hard but smooth. They squirmed and pushed, trying to get as close to her warm body as possible. Sarah held on, even though she was scared. After a few minutes, the cubs stopped moving so much. They settled against her, their bodies slowly warming. Sarah felt vibrations running through them. It took her a moment to realize they were purring. The sound was deeper than a cat's purr, more like a small engine running. "There you go," Sarah whispered. "That's better, isn't it?" The cubs purred louder. One of them tucked its head under her chin. Another curled its tail around her arm. Sarah leaned back against the wall. She was stuck here until someone found them. The door wouldn't open from the inside. She just had to wait and keep the cubs warm. She had no idea whose cubs these were. Just some Krathic family on the station, probably. They would come looking eventually. Sarah hoped they would understand it was an accident. She hoped they wouldn't kill her for being locked in a room with their children. The cubs grew warmer and heavier. Sarah felt exhausted. The stress of the day, the fear, the cold, it all caught up with her. Her eyes grew heavy. Someone will come, she told herself. Just stay awake. But the cubs were so warm now, and their purring was almost hypnotic. Sarah's eyes closed. Just for a minute, she thought. Just a short rest. The cubs snuggled closer. One of them licked her hand with a rough tongue. Sarah smiled without opening her eyes. She fell asleep with 3 predator cubs curled against her, purring like she was their mother. She didn't know that these weren't just any cubs. She didn't know they belonged to Supreme Commander Vexthar, the leader of the entire Krathic Empire. She didn't know that in a few hours, elite guards would blow down the door and find her there. She didn't know that this accident would change everything between humans and the Krathic forever. For now, she just slept, keeping the cubs warm in the dark, cold room. Supreme Commander Vexthar stood in the station's command center, his scales dark with anger. Around him, his officers moved quickly, checking every system, every camera, every sensor. His cubs were missing. "Report," Vexthar demanded. His voice was low and dangerous. When a Krathic spoke in that tone, people died. "The power failure affected the residential sector, Commander," an officer said, his scales pale with fear. "The security system went down for 6 minutes. When it came back online, your quarters were empty." 6 minutes, Vexthar repeated. "Someone took them in 6 minutes." "We believe so, Commander." Vexthar's claws extended. Someone had stolen his children. During a diplomatic meeting with a new species. The timing was too perfect. This was an attack. "Lock down the station," he ordered. "No one leaves. No one enters. Find my cubs." Alarms blared through the station. Heavy doors slammed shut. Krathic warriors poured into the corridors, weapons ready. The elite guard mobilized, their armor gleaming even in the dim emergency lights. On the other side of the station, the human delegation heard the alarms. Ambassador Williams looked up from his tablet, confused. "What's happening?" he asked. His security chief, Martinez, checked her communicator. Her face went pale. "Sir, the station is in lockdown. The Krathic have activated their military protocols." "Why? What did we do?" "I don't know, sir. But they're searching for something. Or someone." Martinez paused. "Sir, we're missing a team member. Dr. Chen never made it back after the power failure." Williams felt cold. "Where is she?" "We don't know." The situation spiraled quickly. The Krathic wouldn't explain why they had locked down the station. The humans thought they were under attack. Both sides moved to defensive positions. Weapons were powered up. The fragile peace began to crack. In the residential sector, Vexthar led his elite guard personally. They moved through the corridors in perfect formation. Vexthar's mind raced with dark thoughts. If his cubs were harmed, he would tear this station apart. He would destroy the entire human fleet. He would make them pay, but first he had to find them. "Commander," a technician called. "We have a problem. The environmental controls failed in Section 7. One of the rooms lost heat for over an hour before we could restore it." Vexthar stopped. "Which room?" The technician checked his screen. His scales went white. Your private family quarters, Commander." Vexthar ran. His guards struggled to keep up with him. His private quarters, where he had left his cubs for a short nap while he attended meetings. The room should have been locked, secure. But with the power failure, he reached the door and tried to open it. Locked. The emergency protocols had sealed it. "Override it," he commanded. "Sir, we can't. The system is frozen. We'll have to cut through." Then cut. While his engineers worked on the door, Vexthar ordered thermal scans. He had to know if his cubs were alive. He had to know if they were hurt. The scans came back. The technician stared at the screen, confused. "Commander, I'm reading 4 life signs in that room." "4?" Vexthar leaned closer. "My 3 cubs and an unknown heat signature, sir. Smaller than Krathic. Different heat pattern." Vexthar's blood went cold, then hot with rage. Someone was in there with his cubs. An intruder, an assassin, a kidnapper. "Get that door open now." His guards formed up behind him, weapons ready. This was it. They would breach the room, eliminate the threat, and rescue the cubs. Standard procedure. Vexthar had done this 100 times in his military career, but as the door began to glow from the cutting torches, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not for himself. For his children. Inside the room, Sarah woke slowly. She was warm and comfortable. Something heavy was on her chest. Something else was curled against her side. A third weight pressed against her legs. She opened her eyes and remembered. The cubs. She was still locked in with them, but they had moved in her sleep. They were piled on top of her now, all 3 of them. The smallest one was sleeping with its head on her shoulder. Another had wrapped its tail around her waist. The third was sprawled across her legs. Sarah smiled despite her situation. They looked almost cute like this, peaceful. Their scales rose and fell with their breathing. They were still purring, a constant low rumble. She tried to move slowly, not wanting to wake them. But as soon as she shifted, all 3 cubs lifted their heads. They looked at her with those large eyes. Then, to her surprise, they made happy chirping sounds. The smallest one licked her face with its rough tongue. "Good morning to you too," Sarah whispered. The cubs climbed on her, purring and chirping. They seemed playful now, not scared. One of them grabbed her hand gently in its mouth, not biting, just holding. Another rubbed its head against her cheek. Sarah laughed softly. Okay. I like you too." She had no idea what time it was or how long she had been asleep. She checked her tablet. Dead. The battery had finally run out. "Great. Well, guys, looks like we're stuck here until someone finds us," she told the cubs. They didn't seem worried. They kept playing, climbing over her, investigating her clothes and hair with their noses. Then Sarah heard something. A sound outside the door. A high-pitched whining noise like metal cutting through metal. The cubs heard it too. They stopped playing and turned toward the door. Their scales stood up. They made low growling sounds. Sarah's stomach dropped. Someone was cutting through the door. Someone was coming. She should have felt relief. Rescue was here. But something felt wrong. The way the cubs were reacting, the aggressive sound of the cutting, an alarm started blaring. Loud and harsh. The cubs hissed and pressed closer to Sarah. She wrapped her arms around them instinctively. The door glowed red-hot. The cutting sound grew louder. Sarah stood up, still holding the cubs. Her heart pounded. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to happen fast. The door exploded inward. Pieces of metal flew across the room. Sarah turned her body, shielding the cubs. Something hot hit her back, but she ignored it. Through the smoke and sparks, shapes poured into the room. Big shapes, armored, carrying weapons. Sarah saw at least 6 of them, maybe more. They moved like soldiers, like a military unit breaching a hostile position. All their weapons pointed at her. Sarah couldn't breathe. These were Krathic warriors, elite guards by the look of their armor, and they thought she was a threat. She did the only thing she could think of. She dropped to her knees, covering the cubs with her body. "Don't shoot!" she screamed. "Please don't shoot. They're just babies," the cubs hissed at the warriors. But they didn't run. They stayed with Sarah, pressing against her, their small bodies tense and ready to fight. The warriors didn't shoot, but they didn't lower their weapons either. They stood frozen, staring at the impossible scene in front of them. A huge figure stepped through the broken doorway, even bigger than the guards, wearing no armor but radiating authority. His scales were deep blue, almost black. His eyes were the color of ice. Supreme Commander Vexthar looked at the human woman kneeling on his floor. He looked at his 3 cubs who should have been terrified, should have been traumatized. Instead, they were purring and trying to climb on the strange alien who had somehow broken into his quarters. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The warriors waited for orders. Sarah waited for death. The cubs just chirped happily, not understanding the tension. Vexthar's mind tried to process what he was seeing. It made no sense. Nothing about this made sense. His cubs didn't trust strangers. They barely tolerated other Krathic. They had once bitten a royal advisor who got too close, but they were treating this human like she was family. "Explain," Vexthar finally said, his voice deadly quiet. "Explain now, human, why you are in my private quarters with my children." Sarah couldn't speak at first. Her mouth was too dry. She was still on her knees, still covering the cubs, still expecting to die. But the huge Krathic warrior was waiting for an answer. "It was an accident," she finally managed to say. Her voice shook. "I heard them crying. The power failure. The environmental controls were offline. They were freezing. I just wanted to help." Vexthar took a step closer. His warriors tensed, ready to act. "You broke into my private quarters to help?" "No, I didn't know whose quarters they were. I didn't even know they were your children. I just saw small animals in distress." Sarah swallowed hard. The door locked behind me. I couldn't get out. I kept them warm. "That's all?" "You kept them warm," Vexthar repeated slowly. He looked at his cubs. They were indeed pressed against the human, seeking her warmth even now. "You stayed with them?" "I didn't have a choice. The door wouldn't open. You could have stayed away from them. Let them freeze while you waited by the door." Sarah looked up at him, confused. "They were babies. They would have died." One of the warriors made a sound, something between a hiss and a laugh. "Commander, Krathic cubs have killed trained soldiers from other species. This human should be dead." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. She looked down at the 3 cubs still purring against her. They kill people?" "They are predators," Vexthar said. "Even as children, they are dangerous. They attack anything they see as a threat, always." He paused. "Except, apparently, you." The smallest cub chose that moment to climb into Sarah's lap. It curled up there, making happy chirping sounds. It looked up at her with those big eyes and yawned, showing all its crystal fangs. Sarah couldn't help it. She petted its head gently. The cub purred louder. Every warrior in the room stared. Vexthar's scales rippled with emotion Sarah couldn't read. "That is impossible," one of the warriors whispered. "Get healer Zixara," Vexthar ordered. "Now." A warrior ran from the room. The others stayed, weapons still pointed at Sarah, though they seemed less sure now. Sarah kept still, barely breathing. The cubs seemed completely unconcerned. They were playing with her hair, her fingers, her clothes. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then a new Krathic entered. This one was smaller, with scales that shimmered green and gold. She carried a bag of medical equipment and moved with quiet authority. "Commander, you called for—" She stopped when she saw Sarah and the cubs. Her jaw dropped open. "By the ancient stars." "Healer Zixara, you specialize in child development," Vexthar said. "Explain what I am seeing." The healer moved closer slowly. She circled Sarah and the cubs, watching every movement. The cubs ignored her, focused entirely on Sarah. One of them was trying to get Sarah to play, pawing at her hand. "This is pack-bonding behavior," Zixara said softly. "The cubs have accepted this human into their family unit. That's impossible. They just met." "I know, Commander. But look at them. They are displaying all the signs." They stay close to her. They seek her warmth and attention. They are relaxed in her presence. And most importantly, Zixara pointed at the cubs. They smell like her now. Her scent is all over them. In our psychology and our very biology, that means family. Vexthar was quiet for a long moment. Cubs either accept or reject within the first few hours of meeting someone. There is no middle ground. "Yes, Commander. These 3 have fully accepted this human. In their minds, she is pack. She is family." Sarah listened to this conversation, trying to understand. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. Zixara turned to her. "It means, human, that these cubs will not leave you willingly. It means they trust you completely. It means they would defend you with their lives." She paused. "It also means by our law and custom you are now considered part of their pack. Part of their family." "What?" Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. "But I'm not. I'm human. I'm not Krathic. This was just an accident." "Biology does not care about accidents," Vexthar said. He sat down on the floor, suddenly looking tired. His warriors stared in shock. The Supreme Commander never sat during official business. Tell me, human. What is your name? Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a xenobiologist with the Earth delegation. Dr. Chen, do you understand what you have done? These are not just any cubs. They are my children. I am Supreme Commander of the Krathic Empire. My bloodline is the most powerful in our society. He looked at her directly. And you have bonded with them. Sarah felt dizzy. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to keep them alive. Why? One of the warriors demanded. They are aliens to you, predators. Why risk yourself? Sarah looked at the warrior, confused by the question. Because they needed help. Because they were scared and cold. Because... She struggled to find words. Because that's what you do. You help when someone needs it. The Krathic in the room looked at each other. Zixara made a strange humming sound. Commander, this matches the reports we received about humans. What reports? Sarah asked. Vexthar stood up. Before we came to this station, we researched your species. We found something unusual. Humans seem to form emotional bonds with almost anything. Your people keep dangerous predators as pets. You care for other species young. You risk your lives for animals that are not even your own kind. He studied Sarah closely. We thought it was exaggeration. Error in translation. But now I see it is true. You call it weakness, Zixara added. This capacity for empathy, for bonding across species lines. Most races see it as a flaw. But with Krathic cubs, she shook her head in wonder. It may be the only reason you are still alive. Sarah petted the cub in her lap without thinking. We don't think it's weakness. We think it's just being decent, being kind. Most species run from Krathic cubs on instinct, Vexthar said. Their predator instinct is strong even in the young. Other races have tried to build alliances with us by offering gifts, by showing strength. But no one has ever walked into a room with our cubs and simply cared for them. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Sarah watched his scales shift colors. From dark blue to lighter shades, she was learning to read Krathic body language. He was processing something big. This changes things, Vexthar finally said. By our law, you are now bound to my house. The cubs have claimed you. I cannot undo that. I will not undo that. Our customs are sacred, but what does that mean for the alliance? Sarah asked. For the negotiations? I don't know yet. Vexithar looked at his children, still playing happily with this strange human. This has never happened before. We have no precedent. No rules for a situation where an alien species bonds with our young. Commander, one of the warriors said carefully, the human delegation is demanding answers. They think we have kidnapped Dr. Chen. The situation is escalating. Vexthar sighed, a very human gesture. Of course it is. Release the lockdown. Send a message to Ambassador Williams. Tell him Dr. Chen is safe and will contact him shortly. He looked at Sarah. Can you stand? Sarah started to get up, but the cubs protested. They grabbed her clothes with their claws, making distressed sounds. She sat back down. They don't want me to go. No, Vexthar said. They don't. And that, Dr. Chen, is the problem we must solve. He knelt down to his children's level. The cubs looked at him and chirped happily. He spoke to them in the Krathic language, his voice gentle. The cubs responded, but they didn't leave Sarah's side. Vexthar switched to English. Dr. Chen, I am going to make an unusual request. I want you to stay with the cubs for a few more days. Under supervision, of course. I need to understand this bond. I need to see if it lasts or if it was just trauma response. Stay with them? Sarah's mind raced. But the negotiations can wait. Or continue without you. His eyes were serious. This may be more important than trade agreements. You have done something no alien has ever done. You have made Krathic cubs love you. That changes everything. Sarah looked down at the three small faces looking up at her with trust and affection. She thought about the mission, about Earth's desperate need for allies. She thought about how this could all go wrong. Then the smallest cub licked her hand again, and Sarah made her decision. Okay, she said. I'll stay. 5 days passed and Sarah's world became very strange. She lived in a section of the station reserved for Krathic families. Her room was next to the cubs' quarters, though they spent most of their time with her. Healer Zixara visited twice a day to observe. Guards watched constantly. Cameras recorded everything, and the cubs followed Sarah everywhere. She named them with Vexthar's permission. The smallest, who had climbed into her lap first, became Zix. The playful one who always wanted to wrestle became Kara. The quiet, thoughtful one became Moth. The names were human simple, but the cubs seemed to like them. They learned her routine quickly. When Sarah woke up, they were already at her door, chirping to be let in. They ate breakfast with her, though Krathic food was very different from human meals. They followed her to observation sessions, played during her breaks, and curled up with her at night. Sarah learned about them too. Zix liked to be held and would cry if Sarah didn't pay enough attention. Kara was brave and curious, always exploring. Moth was the smartest, figuring out puzzles and problems before the others. But more than that, Sarah learned about Krathic culture. Vexthar visited every day, watching his children interact with her. At first he was cold and formal, but slowly he began to talk. "We are not a gentle people," he told her one afternoon. The cubs were napping, piled on Sarah's lap as usual. "We do not show weakness. We do not trust easily. This is how we survived. This is how we became powerful." "But you love your children," Sarah said, stroking Moth's scales gently. "I can see it, of course." "They are blood. They are pack. We protect our own with everything we have." Vexthar watched his cubs sleep, but we do not extend that protection to outsiders ever. "Until now," Sarah said quietly. "Until now," he agreed. "You have confused everything, Dr. Chen. My cubs should fear you, should attack you. Instead, they love you. It makes no sense in our world." Sarah thought about that. Maybe that's why it works. Because it makes no sense. Because sometimes the most important things don't follow logic. Vexithar made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You speak like a philosopher, not a scientist. I'm a biologist. I study life. And life is rarely logical." The commander seemed to consider this. "Our trainers use dominance and force with cubs. It works, it has always worked. But I watch you with my children and you use something else. Patience," Sarah said, "and empathy. I try to understand what they need, what they're feeling. Then I respond to that. It should not work, but it does." Vexthar was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he finally said. "It does." The human delegation was not happy. Ambassador Williams called Sarah 3 times a day. He wanted her to come back. The negotiations were stalled. The Krathic were making strange demands. Everything was falling apart, but Sarah couldn't leave. The cubs became distressed whenever she tried to go too far. Zix would cry. Kara would try to follow. Moth would sit by the door and refuse to eat. After the first day of attempted separation, Vexthar told her to stop trying. "They are too young," he said. "The bond is too new. Forcing separation now could damage them psychologically." So Sarah stayed. She taught the cubs games from Earth. She showed them pictures of animals and plants. She sang them songs at bedtime. The cubs soaked it all up, learning human concepts alongside Krathic traditions. And through the cubs, both species learned about each other. Krathic were efficient and honorable, but they didn't understand concepts like cute or compassion for strangers. Humans were adaptable and emotional, but they didn't understand the strict hierarchies and honor codes that governed Krathic society. Zixara documented everything. "This is groundbreaking," she told Sarah. "Cross-species pack bonding at this level. It could change how we understand psychology, sociology, even evolution." But not everyone was pleased. Sarah started noticing Krathic in the corridors who watched her with hostile eyes. She heard whispers in languages she couldn't understand. The guards around her increased. On the 6th day, Vexthar came to her looking grim. "We have a problem," he said. "There is a faction that opposes this experiment. They see you as a threat." "A threat? I'm just taking care of your kids." "Exactly. If humans can bond with our cubs, they could infiltrate our society. They could weaken us from within." He sat down heavily. "There are some who believe all humans are dangerous. That this alliance was a mistake. What do they want? They want you gone. They want the cubs separated from you. They want the negotiations ended." Vexthar looked tired. "They want things to go back to how they were when we trusted no one and no one trusted us." Sarah felt cold. "Are you going to send me away?" "No, I gave you my word. And more than that." He watched his cubs playing with Sarah's tablet, trying to figure out a game she had shown them. "I am beginning to see value in what you represent. Your people's ability to connect, to empathize, to build bridges. It is not weakness. It is power of a different kind." That evening, Sarah was walking back from dinner with the cubs. The corridors were quieter than usual. Too quiet. The cubs sensed it too. Their scales stood up. They pressed close to Sarah's legs. The attack came fast. A Krathic warrior stepped from a side corridor, weapon raised. Sarah didn't even have time to scream. She just grabbed the cubs and turned her body to shield them. But the shot never came. The cubs moved faster than Sarah could believe. Zix, small and gentle, leaped at the attacker with a scream that made Sarah's ears ring. Kara and Moth followed, their young claws extended. The warrior tried to aim around them, but the cubs were everywhere, hissing and biting and scratching. Guards came running. More warriors arrived. Someone grabbed Sarah and pulled her back. The attacker went down. The cubs didn't stop. They were trying to protect Sarah, their pack member, and nothing else mattered. It took Vexthar himself to calm them down. Enough, he commanded in Krathic. The cubs stopped but didn't back away. They stood between Sarah and the attacker, their small bodies tense and ready. Sarah was shaking. She dropped to her knees and the cubs rushed to her. But they didn't climb on her like usual. They circled her, guarding her, checking to make sure she was okay. Vexithar knelt beside Sarah. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay, but—" Sarah looked at the cubs. Zix had a small cut on her shoulder. Sarah reached for her. "Zix is injured. It is minor. She's hurt protecting me." Sarah's voice broke. "She's just a baby and she got hurt protecting me." Vexithar watched Sarah examine his daughter, watched her gentle hands check the wound, watched her eyes fill with tears. He had seen warriors cry for fallen comrades, but he had never seen someone cry for a child that wasn't their own species. "Dr. Chen," he said slowly, "you risked your life for my children when they were cold, and now they risk their lives for you. This is not just pack bonding. This is family." Sarah looked up at him, tears on her cheeks. "I know I love them. I didn't mean to, but I do. And they love you." Vexithar stood up and called to his guards. "Take the attacker away, and send word to the council. I am calling an emergency session." "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. Vexthar looked at her, at his cubs still protecting her, at the small family that had formed in just 6 days. "Something unprecedented," he said. "Something that may change everything." That night, healer Zixara treated the cubs' minor injuries while Sarah held them. Zix had been given something for pain and was sleepy. She curled in Sarah's lap, purring softly. Kara and Moth pressed against Sarah's sides. "They will never let you go now," Zixara said quietly. "After this, after fighting for you, the bond is permanent. You are their family forever." Sarah kissed the top of Zix's head. "Good," she whispered, "because I'm not letting them go either." Outside the medical room, Vexithar stood with his senior advisors. They argued about risk and tradition and proper protocol, but Vexthar barely heard them. He was thinking about a human woman who walked into danger to save children that weren't hers, who cried when they were hurt, who loved without hesitation or condition, and he was thinking about how that kind of love, that kind of courage, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The council chamber was enormous, filled with the most powerful Krathic in the Empire. Sarah stood in the center, wearing formal human diplomatic clothes but with 3 cubs clinging to her. She had tried to get them to stay with the guards, but they refused. After the attack, they wouldn't leave her side. Ambassador Williams stood beside her, looking nervous. The rest of the human delegation waited outside. This meeting would decide everything. Supreme Commander Vexthar stood at the head of the chamber. Around him, dozens of Krathic leaders watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Some had traveled from other star systems just for this emergency session. "We are here," Vexthar began, "to discuss an unprecedented situation. A human has bonded with Krathic cubs, my cubs. This has never happened before in our history." An older Krathic with silver scales spoke up. "It is an abomination. The human must be separated from the young ones immediately. They can be retrained," Sarah said before she could stop herself. Every eye turned to her. "They're children, not soldiers. You can't just retrain away love." "You dare speak in this council?" the silver Krathic demanded. "She dares," Vexthar said quietly, "because she has earned the right. My cubs accepted her. They love her. They defended her against an attacker. By our oldest laws, that makes her family. That gives her voice in matters concerning them." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Moth, sensing the tension, chirped softly and pressed closer to Sarah. She put her hand on his head gently. Another counselor stood. Even if we accept the bond, what does this mean for our relations with humanity? One strange connection does not make an alliance. No, Vexthar agreed. But it reveals something important. We have spent centuries building our empire through strength and fear. Other species respect our power, but they do not trust us. They do not befriend us. They certainly do not love us. He gestured to Sarah and the cubs. This human walked into danger to save my children. She asked for nothing in return. She expected nothing. She simply cared. And in 6 days she has taught my cubs things our trainers could not teach in 6 months. Weakness, someone muttered. Is it? Vexthar's voice was sharp. Our cubs are notoriously difficult to train. They are aggressive, territorial, resistant to instruction. Yet Dr. Chen has them playing educational games, learning multiple languages, and practicing patience. She does this not through dominance, but through understanding, through empathy. Healer Zixara stepped forward. She had been invited as an expert witness. Counselors, I have studied Dr. Chen's interactions with the cubs extensively. What she does should not work by our understanding of psychology. But it does work. And after researching human culture, I believe I know why. Explain, the Silver Counselor demanded. Humans have a unique trait among intelligent species. They form emotional bonds across species barriers. They keep predators as companions. They care for animals that provide no benefit. They cry over creatures from other worlds. We dismiss this as foolishness. But perhaps, she paused, perhaps it is their greatest strength. How is caring for useless animals a strength? Another counselor asked. Sarah spoke up again. Because it makes bridges. Because it creates trust. Because when you care about someone, really care, you work harder to understand them, to help them, to make things work. She looked around the chamber. You've built an empire on power. That's impressive, but you're alone. You have subjects but not friends. Allies but not family. Is that really strength? The chamber was silent. Sarah worried she had gone too far, but then Vexthar spoke. Dr. Chen is correct. We are powerful but isolated. Other species fear us. They obey but they do not trust. This limits us in ways we have never acknowledged. He looked directly at the council. I propose a new kind of alliance with humanity. Not just trade. Not just military cooperation. Cultural integration. What does that mean? Williams asked quietly. It means, Vexthar said, that humans would serve as ambassadors, as bridge builders. You have the ability to connect with species we cannot reach, to build trust where we have only built fear. Together we could create a coalition unlike anything the galaxy has seen. You want humans to work with Krathik? The Silver Counselor sounded skeptical. Teaching them to be soft? No, teaching us to be complete. We provide strength, protection, and resources. Humans provide connection, empathy, and understanding. Both sides become stronger together. Sarah felt the cub shifting against her legs. Zix climbed up and tugged on her sleeve, wanting attention. Sarah picked her up automatically, holding her close. The small cub purred and settled against her shoulder. The image was not lost on the council. A human holding a Krathik cub with complete trust on both sides. It was a powerful symbol. An older female counselor spoke. If we agree to this alliance, what would Dr. Chen's role be? Sarah looked at Vexthar. They had discussed this privately, but hearing it in the council was different. Dr. Chen would become the first human ambassador to the Krathik Empire, Vexthar said. She would remain with my family, helping to raise my cubs. She would also train other humans to work with Krathik families. Eventually, we would have human ambassadors throughout our empire, building connections, fostering understanding. That's... Williams looked at Sarah. That's a lifetime commitment. You'd have to leave Earth, maybe forever. Sarah looked down at the 3 cubs. Zix was falling asleep on her shoulder. Kara was playing with her fingers. Moth was watching the council with intelligent eyes, understanding more than anyone realized. She thought about Earth, about her old life, about everything she would be giving up. It was too much, too big a decision. Then Zix made a small sound in her sleep and Sarah's heart melted. These cubs trusted her, loved her, needed her, and she loved them back with a fierceness that surprised her. More than that, she saw the potential. If this worked, if humans and Krathik could really build this kind of alliance, it could change everything. Not just for these 2 species, but for the whole galaxy. I'll do it, Sarah said. Her voice was steady. I'll stay. William started to protest, but Sarah shook her head. Ambassador, this is bigger than one person. This is a chance to show the galaxy what humanity can offer. Not weapons or technology or wealth, but friendship, understanding, the ability to look at someone completely different and see family. She looked at Vexthar. I accept the position. I'll be your ambassador. I'll help build this alliance, and I'll take care of your cubs like they're my own, because they are. The council deliberated for hours. Sarah waited outside with the cubs and Williams. The ambassador tried several times to convince her to reconsider. But Sarah's mind was made up. Finally, the doors opened. Vexthar emerged. The council has agreed, narrowly. There are conditions and stipulations. But the core proposal is approved. We will build this new alliance together. Williams let out a breath. Thank God. Earth needs this alliance. Earth gets more than an alliance, Vexthar said. Earth gets partnership. True partnership. As do we. He looked at Sarah. Welcome to House Vexthar, Ambassador Chen. Your quarters are being prepared. We have much work to do. 6 months later, the station hosted a ceremony. Representatives from dozens of species came to witness the formal signing of the Human-Krathic Alliance. Sarah stood on the platform next to Vexthar. The cubs, bigger now but still young, sat at her feet. She wore a blend of human and Krathic ceremonial dress. On her shoulder was a badge marking her as both a human ambassador and a member of House Vexthar. Other humans had joined the program now. 20 volunteers were training with Krathic families across the Empire. Early reports were promising. The Krathic were learning to trust. The humans were learning to understand. And other species were taking notice. Several delegations had approached the Alliance, curious about these humans who could befriend apex predators. Former enemies of the Empire were cautiously opening dialogues. The galaxy was changing. During her speech, Sarah looked out at the assembled crowd. She saw hope, curiosity, and possibility. She saw a future where strength and compassion weren't opposites but complements. Six tugged on her dress, wanting to be picked up. Sarah lifted her smoothly, not breaking her speech. The crowd murmured. A human ambassador holding a Krathic cub during a formal ceremony. It should have been scandalous. Instead, it was perfect. After the ceremony, Vexthar stood with Sarah on an observation deck, watching ships come and go. The cubs were playing nearby, their laughter echoing in the space. Do you regret your choice? Vexthar asked. Sarah thought about Earth, about the life she left behind. Then she looked at the cubs, at this strange alien who had become her friend, at the galaxy opening up before them. No, she said honestly. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. You changed everything, you know. One human, one accident, one moment of compassion, Sarah smiled. That's the thing about humans. We look at a dangerous predator and think, I could pet that. We see someone in trouble and help even if it's risky. We make friends with the impossible. She paused. It's not always smart, but sometimes it changes the galaxy. Vexthar made that sound that was almost a laugh. Humanity's greatest weapon is not your technology or your strategy. It is your absurd, relentless refusal to see anyone as an enemy when you could see them as family instead. Is that so bad?